All right, let's get to our final opening act topic for this week's Rock Squad podcast, and that there's a Scott Weiland biopic in the works. It's a new film that's going to be based on the life of the late, great Stone Temple Pilots frontman, we love Scott Weiland. We love the music of SCP. That's been no secret on this podcast. But this is going to be based on his 2012 autobiography, which was called Not Dead and Not for Sale. The movie's going to be called Paper Hearts. There's no word on who's going to play Scott Weiland, or if they're going to be able to use the music of STP or any of his solo stuff. Personally, I'm not very excited for this because I don't like rock biopic movies or music biopic movies in any regard. I often find them to be really stereotypical, really cheesy. There's always the big play up. I suppose in this movie they'll probably do that as well. They always play up the sex, drugs, and rock and roll angle of everything. There's always a scene in the movie where the singer of the band is in the studio with his hand on the headphone, and they get the magic inspiration that they needed to write their biggest hit song. So maybe it'll be it's almost like Vaseline. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I got an idea. It's like we should sing "Tripping on a Hole in a Paper Heart," and they get the idea like a bolt of lightning. It's stereotypical. I don't like it at all. I would rather watch a music documentary about Scott Weiland than something like this. Absolutely. Right?
Yeah, man. They have that scene, and then they also have the scene where they've been going at it for a while, and the singer's late to the party, like late to the session, and they're all standing around like, we're not going to take this. Somebody needs to say something. And then he comes, he always comes in like all disheveled, like he just
sunglasses on.
And they're like, he's like, and then it's always, what's your problems? It's never, he always switches it like, I'm here, Yeah. Every movie, man, every movie has that scene in it. That's hilarious. I'm not a fan of that either. I'm not a fan of the biopics. I feel like, especially artists like that I feel like a connection with, that we've followed their career and we've seen them perform and all that stuff. It's so tough for me to sit back and see some hot trotting actor, some young guy.
Jared Leto, Scott Weiland.
I'm so crazed on heroin, and it's like, that's not how he was, so I don't know. I'm all for a good movie, but I don't know. I think for whatever reason, that era of rock, even watching some of the Elton John stuff, and it's hard for me because I'm so invested in the actual art that I have to force myself to step back and be like, don't be a snob about it. You know what I mean? I know this wasn't how Rocket Man was written, but just sit there and take it,
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of those, and they always do. They fold into the the cliches, and it's always super cheesy. The only biopic I watched, which was a hoot, and I feel like it was kind of on par, we've talked about it before, is The Dirt by Motley Crue. And it's disgusting and it's trashy, and I think it's exactly what it's supposed to be. So you know what I mean? I couldn't imagine it any other way. But I've been disappointed through, I was disappointed with the Queen one. I was disappointed. I was disappointed with Elton John. Why bother? You know what? Maybe for the next generation, for my kids, do it. But for me, I'm not going to see that movie. I don't think someone between the ages of 15 and 25 is going to go. So who's it for? That's what I want to know. Who's signing up for it?
Who's interested? Well, the biopics, most of them, some of them do, but most of them never even secure the rights to the music that they want to use for the artist, and so they always end up using some generic stuff that sounds like the actual artist, but not really. I think in the Queen movie they had access to the music, and Rocket Man they did as well.
Yeah, they were part of the whole thing there.
But most of them, I think there was a Jimi Hendrix movie with Andre 3000 that came out quite a while ago.
Did it come out? I didn't even know it
did out. Yeah, but there was no Jimi Hendrix music in it, so what's the point? You're writing
all along the light tower.
Yeah.
They just can't quite do it.
Yeah. When it comes to bands, it's always better to watch a really awesome documentary. When we think about the Foo Fighters documentary, or even, the What Drives Us documentary that Dave Grohl did recently, or
ZZ Top's got a great documentary out right now.
Documentary.
Unbelievable.
There's tons of them out there. Metallica, some kind of monster.
Fleetwood Mac,
or anything, or an episode of classic albums or something like that. you're better off watching something like that than a biopic movie, because they don't really get deep into it in a biopic movie. Personally, I know as songwriters ourselves, as musicians, and just fans of music in general, we like to see a little bit more in-depth discussion about how they wrote the songs, how they got from point A to point B, how the band formed, and how they went through, the Beatles anthology, another great example. That's an 8-part documentary. It's a little bit of a cleanup of the overall Beatles story, but it's still a really, really intriguing documentary where they talk to the actual Beatles. They have audio and
2.5 hours of Ringo on a boat, but it's good.
Exactly. And them jamming on the lawn and stuff. But it's still cool, and it's very much informative. If you're a music fan who's wanting to get more into a band and you want to know more about their story, the Beatles Get Back documentary that's going to be.
I was just going to mention the new Peter Jackson film falls right into that category. Yeah, that stuff's compelling to me. I've never been a big even reading. I'm not a big reader. No. I like reading, but I always like autobiographies as opposed to
me too.
You know what I mean, or biographies on topics as opposed to fiction and stuff. I like to know real people's stories. I'll from how it started, how it finished, the peaks and the valleys. I've never been
more interesting than real life. Real life is the
exactly.
I love fiction. When it comes to fiction, I love movies and television. I'm not a big reader of fiction, but I'm the same as you. Biographies about bands. I wrote a biography about the Beatles, which was Mark Lewison's part 1 of his tune-in books that he's putting out. But then I read a good book about George Lucas and how he grew up and how he came up with Star Wars, which was really interesting. I really like reading that.
It's interesting too, because I've always been such a fan of bio-y kind of things. And now with podcasting, it's opened up a whole new level. You used to have to wait, when we were growing up, you used to have to wait for a book to cover all the topics. Now, if the artist is open and willing, you can just tune in and listen to him talk in detail about those trials and tribulations and how he overcame things and what really got him and his, where his hardships were growing up and all that stuff, which is super compelling to me. And I think that's why the success of podcasting has happened the way it has, because I don't think we're alone. There's lots of people that don't like to read unless it's something that tickles that whistle,